The message came through the deep space network as a faint whisper, broken, full of static and heavy with fear. Across the galaxy, countless species heard the same distress signal. "They are coming. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us." But no one moved. The world of Vaelora was far from the trade routes, a quiet planet where the Vaelorians lived in peace. They had shining cities, gentle music, and endless fields of silver grass that danced with the wind. They believed they were safe. Until the Krith, the devourers of stars, arrived. The Krith were a nightmare-given flesh. Metallic skin, razor wings, minds like machines, cold and empty. They didn't invade for power or territory, they consumed. Entire civilizations vanished when the Krith appeared. When Vaelora sent their call for help, they expected the Galactic Union fleets to respond. The Union had promised protection to all member worlds, but hours turned into days, and the skies above Vaelora turned red with the fire of descending Krith ships. No reinforcements came. Commander Talan Veris, the last military officer on Vaelora, stood on the walls of the capital city, watching the horizon burn. He spoke softly to his second-in-command, Saren. "They've abandoned us," he said. "The Union won't risk their fleets for one small world." Saren's voice shook. "Then, what do we do?" Talan looked at the communication console beside him. The distress beacon still blinked, reaching across the stars. He took a slow breath. "We send it again. Maybe someone else will hear it." He didn't know that someone already had. Far beyond the Union's borders, in the dark arm of the galaxy where few dared to travel, a small listening post detected the signal. The operators were not Vaelorian. They were human. The humans had long been silent from galactic affairs. Once they had fought wars that shook star systems, then vanished behind the border worlds. Rumors said they destroyed entire fleets alone, then disappeared into myth. To most of the galaxy, humanity was a warning from history, not a people but a legend. Inside the listening post, Lieutenant Arya Holt leaned closer to the screen. "Sir, you need to see this." "It's a Union code, but it's coming from the Vaelora sector. Looks bad." Her commanding officer, Captain Darius Cole, frowned. "Union space? Not our concern. You know the treaties." "I know," Arya said, her eyes narrowing. "But listen to this part." She replayed the message. The scream of energy fire, the silence, the fear. Darius exhaled slowly. "Krith?" "Most likely," she said. "Same energy signature as the Hive Wars." For a moment, the room was silent. Every human in the outpost remembered those old reports. The Krith had nearly reached the Sol system once. Humanity had stopped them, but at a terrible cost. Millions dead. Whole colonies lost. Arya spoke again. "They're begging for help. The Union's ignoring them." Darius looked out the window at the black ocean of stars. "We swore we wouldn't get involved again. The last time we did, we almost didn't survive." "Maybe," Arya said softly, "but they won't survive at all." Darius turned. There was a long silence. Then he said the words that would change everything. "Prep the long-range transmitters. We're going to alert command." Within hours, encrypted messages spread through humanity's hidden networks. Old codes lit up. Silent fleets came online. Deep in forgotten shipyards, massive vessels awakened, their engines humming after decades of quiet. Humanity had heard the call. Back on Vaelora, Talan stood beneath the dark sky. The Krith ships had begun their descent. He could see the burning trails of plasma cutting through the clouds. "Saren," he said quietly, "tell the civilians to head to the shelters. We'll hold as long as we can." Saren nodded, tears in her eyes. "Commander, do you think anyone is coming?" Talan wanted to say yes. He wanted to lie. But before he could speak, a new signal appeared on the console, a faint but steady pulse. "Unknown origin, sir," Saren said, eyes wide. "We're getting something." "Not Union code." Talan's heart raced. "Put it through." A voice came over the channel, calm and firm. "This is the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call." The officers froze. The name was like thunder. Terran. Human. A species the galaxy whispered about. Destroyers, saviors, monsters, depending on who you asked. Talan could hardly breathe. You're real?" "Very real," the voice replied. "And we're on our way. Hold the line, Vaelora. Help is coming." Outside, the first Krith warships pierced the clouds, their dark hulls glowing with energy. But far away, deep in hyperspace, human warships ignited their engines. Blue light filled the void as they jumped toward Vaelora. No reinforcements came. Not from the Union, not from allies. But something far more dangerous had answered. Humanity was coming. The sky above Vaelora was burning. Dark Krith ships hovered like a storm of knives, their engines screaming with cold power. The ground shook as their bombardment began. Buildings collapsed, flames spread across the capital, and the sky turned red. Commander Talan watched from the command tower. "All defensive units, report," he shouted into the comm. But most of the channels returned only static. The Krith were cutting through their lines faster than expected. Saren ran to his side. "Sir, we've lost contact with the West Barrier." "The Krith are everywhere." Talan slammed his fist on the console. "Keep the shield generators running. We hold them back as long as possible." Outside, the city's energy shields flickered under the constant bombardment. The people in the shelters could hear the roar of the enemy even underground. Then suddenly the noise changed. A deep rumble rolled through the air, different, heavier, and far away at first. The Krith bombardment paused for a moment as if even they were unsure. "Sir," Saren whispered, "what is that sound?" Talan stared at the radar screen. New signals were appearing, dozens, then hundreds. They came in from hyperspace in tight formation, fast and silent. Each one was massive, far larger than the Krith ships. The comm crackled again. "This is Admiral Juno Reyes of the Terran Defense Fleet. We are entering Vaelorian orbit. Stand by for tactical coordination." Talan felt his chest tighten. They actually came in orbit. Space itself seemed to blaze as the Terran fleet emerged. Their ships were nothing like the smooth designs of the Galactic Union. These were sharp, dark, and powerful. War machines built for survival. The largest among them, the TDS Valiant, led the charge. Its hull glowed with faint blue lights and its cannons aligned with deadly precision. On the bridge, Admiral Reyes stood with her hands behind her back. "Target the Krith carriers first," she ordered calmly. "Full railgun barrage on my mark. Let's remind the galaxy why they used to fear us." "All batteries ready," replied her tactical officer. "Fire." A heartbeat later, light burst across the void. Massive slugs of metal shot through space at near light speed, tearing straight through the Krith fleet. Explosions bloomed like small suns, and broken fragments scattered into the planet's upper atmosphere. On the surface, the Vaelorians looked up to see streaks of light cutting through the night sky. One after another, burning Krith ships fell like meteors. Saren gasped. "They're destroying them. They're actually winning." Talan couldn't believe it either. "Humans," he whispered. "They fight like no one else." The Krith, surprised and enraged, turned their attention to the new threat. Their fleet reformed, launching waves of energy blasts toward the Terran ships. But humanity had seen that kind of attack before. "Activate kinetic shields," Admiral Reyes ordered. The hulls of the Terran ships shimmered as layers of energy fields came online. The Krith fire hit them and scattered harmlessly across the barrier. "Return fire," she said. Dozens of plasma cannons opened up, the dark of space filled with flashing light as human warships unleashed their fury. The Krith began to fall back, their formation breaking under the relentless assault. Below, the Vaelorian command tower buzzed with hope. "Commander, they're pushing the Krith back into orbit." Talan nodded, still stunned. "Keep the ground forces ready. If those monsters try to land again, we'll support the Terrans." Saren smiled for the first time in days. "Maybe we'll live to see tomorrow." Up above, the Terran fleet continued its attack. Fighters launched from carriers, small, fast, agile ships piloted by humans who had trained all their lives for moments like this. They dove straight into the Krith swarms, weaving between enemy fire. "Blue Squadron, engage targets at Vector 39. "Red Squadron, flank left," came the command. Pilot Eli Park laughed into his headset. "Copy that, Admiral. Let's make them remember who owns the stars." The battle became chaos. Krith ships burst apart one by one. The humans moved with brutal precision. Every strike measured, every move coordinated. On the bridge of the Krith command vessel, their leader, a towering insectoid being, hissed in anger. "Humans, extinct, we were told, lies." Its claws clicked against the controls. "Focus all fire on the Terran flagship. Erase them." Massive beams of energy shot toward the Valiant. The shields flared bright blue, struggling under the impact. The deck shook violently. "Admiral, forward shields at 60%, shouted the engineer. Reyes gritted her teeth. Hold them steady. Push through. Target that command ship. The crew obeyed instantly. Weapons locked. Cannons charged. Then with a single command, the Valiant fired everything it had. The main railgun shot a glowing round the size of a shuttle, cutting across the void and slamming straight into the Krith flagship. The explosion lit up the orbit like a newborn star. The enemy fleet faltered. Their coordination broke. On the ground, Talan saw the fiery streaks fade into the upper atmosphere. The Krith were retreating. For the first time, Vaelora's skies cleared. The fires stopped falling. People came out of the shelters, staring at the glowing blue trails left behind by Terran ships. Saren's voice trembled. "Commander?" "They saved us," Talan nodded slowly. "No, they saved everyone. Because if those things had won here, they would have come for all of us next." Above them, the Terran fleet began to reorganize. The first battle was over, but humanity knew better than to celebrate too early. Admiral Reyes stood at the viewport watching the distant stars. "This isn't the end," she said quietly. "The Krith never stop with one world." Her first officer frowned. "Then what's our next move, Admiral?" She turned toward him, her expression hard and calm. "We find out where they came from, and we end it there." The next morning, the sky over Vaelora was clear for the first time in weeks. Smoke still rose from the ruined city, but the air felt different now. Lighter, calmer. The Krith had vanished into the dark. What remained were broken towers, wounded soldiers, and a planet that had barely survived extinction. Commander Talan stood on the balcony of the command tower, looking toward the horizon. He could see the faint blue trails of the Terran ships high above. He still couldn't believe it. Humans, real humans, would come. Saren walked up beside him. Her uniform was torn, her face marked with dust, but she was smiling. "It feels like a dream," she said quietly. Talan nodded. "If it is, I don't want to wake up." Just then, a communication officer called out, "Commander, incoming transmission from orbit. They're requesting landing coordinates." Talan straightened. "Give them clearance. Tell them they're welcome on Vaelora." Minutes later, a shadow passed across the city. A Terran dropship descended through the clouds, a sleek black vessel with glowing blue engines. It landed gently on the plaza outside the command tower. The ramp opened with a hiss of steam. From the mist stepped Admiral Juno Reyes, followed by a squad of Terran Marines in dark armor. Their suits were heavy, covered with scratches and scars from countless battles. Each one carried a weapon that looked far too advanced for anything the Vaelorians had ever seen. The soldiers spread out, scanning the area. Reyes walked forward calmly, her boots echoing on the metal ground. She removed her helmet, revealing sharp eyes and a scar across her cheek, a mark of someone who had seen too many wars. Talan stepped forward and saluted. "Commander Talan Veris of Vaelora Defense Command." "You have our gratitude, Admiral." Reyes returned the salute. "Admiral Juno Reyes, Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress call." She looked around at the damaged buildings and wounded civilians. "You've held longer than most would have." "That's rare." Talan gave a tired smile. "Rare or foolish, I'm not sure which." Reyes glanced at the burning skyline. "Both maybe, but brave either way." Saren stepped closer, staring at the humans with wide eyes. We thought your kind disappeared. The Union says humanity left the galactic core centuries ago." Reyes nodded. "We did. The wars took too much from us. We went quiet. But we never stopped watching." Talan frowned. "Then why come back now? Why help us?" Reyes looked at him steadily. "Because we remember what the Krith did, and we know they never stop. If we didn't fight them here, they would have come for us again sooner or later." Her words carried a heavy truth. Humanity hadn't returned to the galaxy for fame or alliance. They came because survival demanded it. As they walked through the command tower, Talan showed her the tactical maps. The Krith came from the outer rim. Their ships landed first in the northern hemisphere. We fought for 3 weeks before they reached the capital. Reyes studied the maps. "Their pattern looks familiar," she said quietly. "Same tactics they used during the Hive Wars." Talan looked surprised. "You fought them before?" Reyes nodded. "We almost lost Earth to them. We learned the hard way that you can't reason with the Krith. They don't take prisoners. They don't stop until everything is gone." She turned to her second officer. "Lieutenant, get a full energy scan of this region. I want to know if any Krith ground units are still active." As the humans worked, the Vaelorians watched them in awe. The Terrans moved like predators, calm, alert, perfectly synchronized. Their eyes scanned everything, their hands steady on their weapons. Even in peace, they looked dangerous. Saren whispered to another officer, "They don't act like soldiers. They act like hunters." And she was right. A few hours later, the scans came back. The readings showed faint energy trails leading deep into the mountains north of the city. Reyes looked at the display. They left something behind. Probably a hive seed. If it activates, the Krith will return. Talan's face hardened. Then we destroy it. Reyes nodded. Agreed. We'll send a joint strike team. As preparations began, the people of Vaelora gathered around the human dropships. Children peeked out from behind walls to see the soldiers. Some reached out to touch the smooth metal of the ships. To them, the humans were legends come to life. Saviors wrapped in armor. An old Vaelorian elder approached Admiral Reyes. "We heard stories about your kind," he said. "Stories that you were dangerous. That when humans fight, even gods fear to stand before them." Reyes looked at the old man, her expression unreadable. "Stories always change with time," she said softly. "But yes, we are dangerous, just not to those we protect." That night, as the Terrans and Vaelorians prepared for the mountain mission, Talan stood beside Reyes, watching the stars. "Do you think we can stop them?" he asked quietly. Reyes's voice was calm but heavy. "We can stop them here. But to end them, we'll need to go farther, to their homeworld." Talan turned to her in shock. "You plan to take the war to them?" Reyes looked back at the stars. "If we don't, they'll never stop coming. Humanity learned that once. We won't make the same mistake again." The wind carried the smell of ash across the silent city. Above them, the Terran fleet glowed faintly against the night. For the first time, Vaelora wasn't alone, but the war was far from over. Tomorrow, the hunters would descend into the mountains, and the galaxy would remember what it truly meant when humanity answered the call. The next morning, the mountains north of Vaelora stood silent under a cold gray sky. The air was thin and heavy with ash. From far away, the broken remains of Krith ships could still be seen. Black metal twisted into the ground like claws. Commander Talan stood with Admiral Juno Reyes at the base of the mountain. Behind them, a mix of Terran Marines and Vaelorian soldiers checked their weapons and gear. The humans wore black armor that glowed faintly blue under the clouds, while the Vaelorians carried older plasma rifles. Nervous but determined. "This is the entrance," said a Terran scout, pointing to a dark crack in the rock. "Energy readings inside are off the charts. Whatever the Krith left here, it's alive." Reyes looked at Talan. "Once we go in, there's no communication with orbit. Signal interference is too strong. We finish the mission or we don't come out." Talan nodded. "We're ready." The team entered the cave. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. The walls weren't stone anymore. They were covered in a black, pulsing material that shimmered in the light of their helmets. It looked alive, breathing slowly like the inside of some vast creature. Saren whispered, "What? What is this?" Reyes answered quietly, "Krith biotech. They grow their structures, not build them. Every hive is a living thing." As they moved further down, a low hum began to fill the tunnels. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was organic, like the heartbeat of a giant buried deep underground. The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons. "Keep your scanners up," Reyes said calmly. "They know we're here." Suddenly, a movement flashed in the shadows. Something crawled along the wall fast and silent. A Vaelorian soldier screamed as black claws dragged him into the dark. Gunfire erupted. Blue and red flashes lit the tunnel. "Contact!" "Multiple hostiles," shouted a Terran Marine. Reyes raised her rifle and fired, each shot precise. The tunnel shook with the sound of combat. The Krith were smaller than their ships, but just as deadly. Insect-like creatures with razor limbs and glowing red eyes. Talan shouted over the noise, "Fall back! Form a line!" But the humans didn't retreat. They advanced. Moving in perfect coordination, they cut down the Krith one after another. Their armor absorbed the glancing blows, their rifles fired without hesitation. Saren watched them in awe. The humans moved like machines, cold and relentless. There was no panic, no fear, only focus. When the last Krith fell, silence returned. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. Reyes lowered her weapon. They were guarding something. "Keep moving." The tunnels widened into a large chamber. In the center was a glowing pod, taller than any man. It pulsed with light, blue, then red, then black. The walls around it trembled softly with each pulse. Talan stepped closer. Is that a power core? Reyes shook her head slowly. No, it's worse. She turned to her tech officer. Scan it. The soldier knelt beside the pod, running his scanner. His eyes went wide. Admiral. This isn't a weapon. It's a seed. A hive seed, Talan frowned. A hive seed? Reyes's voice dropped. That's how they spread. They plant these on worlds they invade. If left alone, the seed grows into a full Krith colony within weeks. Billions of them. The realization hit Talan like a punch. Then this world isn't safe yet. No, Reyes said. But it will be. She pulled out a small device from her belt, a shaped fusion charge. We destroy it now, before it wakes up. The team began placing charges around the chamber. Every second felt longer than the last. The hum in the air grew louder. The walls began to twitch as if sensing danger. Saren whispered, It knows what we're doing. Move faster, shouted Reyes. The walls split open and dozens of smaller Krith poured out, screeching in rage. The humans formed a perimeter instantly. Gunfire roared through the chamber again. Plasma bolts lit the dark like lightning. Cover the engineers, Reyes ordered. Talan and Saren fired side by side with the humans. The air was thick with smoke and dust. A Krith leapt from the wall toward Talan, claws outstretched. But a Terran Marine tackled it midair, crushing it under his armored boot. Charges set, yelled the tech officer. Timer ready. Everyone out, Reyes shouted. They ran back through the tunnels, chased by the sound of screeches and collapsing walls. The ground shook beneath their feet. At the surface, the dropships were already waiting, engines hot. Go, go, yelled Reyes as the last of them jumped aboard. The dropship lifted off just as the mountainside exploded behind them. A massive wave of fire and dust rose into the sky. The ground cracked open and black smoke poured out like a dying breath. From orbit, the explosion was visible as a bright flash. The Terran fleet confirmed the signal. The hive seed was destroyed. Inside the dropship, silence filled the cabin. The soldiers sat quietly, covered in ash and blood. Saren leaned against the wall, breathing hard. We did it, she whispered. Talan looked at Reyes. If that seed had grown, Vaelora would have been gone in days. Reyes nodded. Now you understand why we fight them wherever they hide. You can't wait for the Krith to attack. You have to hunt them first. Outside the window, the mountains burned slowly like torches in the distance. Humanity had saved Vaelora again, but the Admiral's expression was still dark. Talan noticed. You think this isn't over, do you? Reyes's eyes stayed on the burning horizon. The Krith don't leave one hive. They leave thousands. And this one wasn't the main nest. The dropship rose higher, heading back toward the Terran flagship. The war was no longer about survival. It was about revenge. The Terran flagship, TDS Valiant, hung in orbit above Vaelora like a silent giant. Its dark hull shimmered faintly under the planet's light. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Officers moved quickly through the halls. Screens glowed with tactical maps, and ships across the fleet prepared for new orders. Admiral Juno Reyes stood before a massive star map on the bridge. Blue holographic lights traced the paths of the destroyed Krith fleets. Red points marked unknown signals, faint, scattered across the galaxy like drops of poison. Commander Talan and Saren stood beside her. They had been brought aboard as representatives of Vaelora. Though they tried to remain calm, both felt small in the presence of such technology. Everything about the humans, their ships, their systems, even the way they moved, showed power and discipline. Reyes spoke quietly, but her voice carried through the room. The hive we destroyed was only a forward seed. The Krith never send one alone. There's always a source hive, a mother cluster. We find that we end their expansion here. Talan frowned. Do you know where it is? Not yet, Reyes said, but our sensors picked up a strange energy pattern in deep space, far beyond Union borders. It matches the Krith frequency. A young Terran officer turned from his station. Admiral, long-range scans confirm massive energy movement in Sector Theta 9. Too large to be a single fleet. It's a hive world. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Reyes nodded slowly. Then that's where we go. Talan looked shocked. You're planning to attack their homeworld? Yes, Reyes said simply. We hit them before they rebuild. If we wait, they'll spread again. That's what they always do. Saren hesitated. But the Galactic Union won't support that. They'll call it aggression. Reyes turned to her. The Union abandoned you. They abandoned countless worlds before you. Humanity doesn't wait for permission to survive. Her words carried a quiet fire. Moments later, alarms echoed through the bridge. The communications officer looked up sharply. Incoming message from the Union command relay. Reyes sighed. Of course, she gestured. Put it through. A holographic image appeared. A tall alien with blue skin and elegant robes, the Union Counselor for Defense. His tone was sharp and cold. Admiral Reyes, this is a restricted operations zone. You and your fleet have violated Union space protocols. Withdraw immediately. Reyes's expression didn't change. Counselor, your Union left Vaelora to die. We stepped in when you wouldn't. The Krith are being handled, the counselor replied quickly. We have ongoing diplomatic— Reyes cut him off. Diplomatic. They eat worlds. There is no diplomacy with monsters. The counselor frowned. If you continue this unauthorized mission, humanity will face sanctions. Reyes leaned forward slightly. Her voice dropped to a deadly calm. If you keep talking, counselor, humanity will face nothing. Because there won't be a galaxy left for your sanctions to matter. The channel went silent. The hologram faded. The bridge crew looked at her, waiting. Reyes gave a small nod. Plot a course for Theta 9. All ships prepare for jump. Engines flared to life across the fleet. Hundreds of human warships aligned in formation, glowing blue against the blackness of space. The Terran Defense Fleet, silent for centuries, Quang was now fully awake. Talan watched in awe. Your people, they don't hesitate. Reyes gave a small smile. Hesitation is what gets you extinct. The countdown began. Hyperspace jump in 10 to 9. As the numbers fell, Talan and Saren felt the deep vibration of the engines beneath their feet. The stars outside the windows began to stretch into lines of light. 2, 1, jump. The fleet vanished into hyperspace. The trip was long and quiet. The hum of the engines filled the corridors, and every officer moved with focused silence. There was no celebration, only preparation. Talan walked through the ship's hangar, watching Terran Marines load weapons and supplies. One of them, a young pilot named Eli Park, noticed him. You've never seen a Terran fleet move before, huh? He said with a grin. Talan shook his head. No, I've never seen anyone move like this. Eli chuckled. That's because humans don't fight for politics. We fight because something tried to kill us first. His words stayed with Talan. Hours later, the fleet exited hyperspace. The view before them made even the humans pause. The Krith hive world filled the screen, a dark planet wrapped in storm clouds, surrounded by enormous living structures that pulsed with energy. Giant tentacle-like towers rose from the surface, connecting to massive ships in orbit. It looked alive, angry, and endless. Saren whispered, It's like a nightmare. Reyes's face hardened. That's not a planet. It's a wound. She turned to her officers. Begin scanning for the main hive network. Prepare strike groups. We're not landing until we know where to hit. Admiral, said the tactical officer. Krith fleets are already moving to intercept. Hundreds of ships inbound. Reyes's eyes narrowed. Then they know we're here. Good. Talan looked at her, half in disbelief, half in admiration. You're not afraid of them, are you? Reyes smiled faintly. Fear's useful. It keeps you alive. But it doesn't stop us. Outside the window, the Krith swarm filled the dark. Their ships moved like living blades, forming a massive wall of death. The Terran fleet adjusted positions, weapons glowing with blue light. Two sides faced each other, the Devourers and the Predators. And in the heart of the Terran flagship, Admiral Juno Reyes gave a single command, open fire. The space above the Krith homeworld boiled with light. Thousands of ships faced each other across the dark void, human metal against living nightmares. The Krith fleet spread like black wings, their vessels pulsing red, each one alive and hateful. The Terran fleet moved as one, silent, cold, deliberate. No banners, no speeches, just purpose. On the bridge of the TDS Valiant, Admiral Juno Reyes stood unmoving, eyes locked on the central screen. Target the largest hive carriers. Cut off their command lines. All batteries ready, Admiral, replied the gunnery officer. Fire. The first volley screamed across the void. Blue plasma and hyperkinetic rounds tore through the Krith ranks. Enormous explosions lit up the black sky, scattering fragments of alien flesh and metal. The Krith responded instantly, unleashing waves of energy beams. The bridge trembled. "Shields at 84%, shouted the engineer. "Hold formation," Reyes ordered. "We don't back down." Outside, Terran fighters dove through fire and debris. Eli Park's voice crackled over comms. "Blue Squadron engaging." "They're everywhere." He spun his fighter, firing at a swarm that tried to flank the flagship. The Krith moved like living missiles, but the Terran pilots flew with perfect precision. Below, the Krith planet glowed with angry light. Towers pulsed brighter as if feeding on the battle above. From orbit, it looked as though the world itself was waking up. Commander Talan watched from the tactical deck beside Reyes. "They're feeding off the energy we're using against them." Reyes nodded grimly. "Then we changed tactics. Prepare ground strike." Saren turned in surprise. "You plan to go down there?" "It's suicide!" Reyes's eyes were calm. "If we don't destroy the core, this entire system will fall. Humanity doesn't run from monsters. We end them." Within minutes, dropships launched from the Terran carriers, sleek dark shapes cutting through the chaos toward the planet below. Among them was Reyes's command shuttle, carrying a mix of Terran Marines and Vaelorian volunteers led by Talan and Saren. The descent was brutal. Lightning tore through the clouds. The surface came into view. Vast black plains of flesh-like ground, spiked with towers of bone and metal. The world pulsed beneath them like the heart of a beast. The dropship hit the ground hard. The soldiers stormed out, weapons ready. The air was thick and foul. The sky churned with red lightning. "Form perimeter," Reyes shouted. We moved to the central hive. They advanced through twisting canyons of living tissue. The Krith came from all directions, crawling along the walls, shrieking like broken machines. The humans opened fire, cutting them down in glowing bursts of plasma. Talan fired beside Reyes, his voice hoarse. "There's too many." "Then we fight harder," she said. Every step was a battle. The ground shook with the movement of something massive below. Finally, they reached the heart of the hive, a vast open pit filled with glowing black liquid. In the center rose a pulsating mass the size of a city, connected to towers that reached into orbit. Saren whispered, "That's it." "The mother core." Reyes activated her comm. "Valiant, this is ground team. We've located the core. Request orbital support." The reply came broken by static. "Copy, Admiral. Krith fleet regrouping. We'll keep them busy. You finish this." The team placed the fusion charges around the pit. The core began to scream, a deep vibrating sound that rattled bones. Krith swarms poured from the walls. "Hold them," Reyes yelled. "We finished the job." Human and Vaelorian soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, firing nonstop. The air turned white with light and smoke. The Krith crashed against them like a wave, claws slicing, teeth tearing, but the line never broke. One by one, the charges blinked green. Armed. Ready. Reyes looked at Talan. "We're out of time." Talan nodded. "Then we make it count." She pressed the detonator. The world erupted. A pillar of blue fire rose from the pit, tearing through the sky and splitting the clouds. The ground heaved like a dying creature. Mountains collapsed. The shockwave swept across the planet, consuming everything in white light. From orbit, the Terran fleet watched the explosion expand, then fade. The Krith ships faltered, their red glow flickering out. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet disintegrated, mindless, leaderless, dead. On the Valiant, the crew held their breath. Then a cheer erupted across the bridge. "The core is gone. The hive world is collapsing." Reyes's voice came through faintly over comms. "Mission accomplished. All teams evacuating." Dropships returned battered but alive. When Reyes and her soldiers stepped back onto the Valiant, the crew saluted them silently. No words were needed. Talan turned to her, exhausted but smiling. "It's over." Reyes looked out at the dying planet, now breaking apart in slow motion. "For this world, yes, but not forever. The galaxy will know they can't rely on councils or treaties. They'll remember who stood when no one else did." Saren nodded softly. "They'll remember humanity." Reyes smiled faintly. "They always do." As the last fragments of the Krith world burned away, the Terran fleet turned toward the stars. For the first time in centuries, humanity wasn't hiding. They had shown the galaxy what true predators looked like, and that the apex of the stars had returned. The voice of the ship's AI broke the silence. "Admiral, message from multiple systems, distress calls." Other worlds under attack. Reyes's expression hardened again. Plot the nearest course. The hunt continues, engines roared. Blue light filled the void as the Terran fleet jumped to hyperspace once more. And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. When no allies came, humanity did.